Approximately 1 year ago, Yale Law School spearheaded a boycott of the U.S. News Law School rankings. The Washington Post recently published an in-depth article featuring real internal emails from law schools obtained through public records requests, showing what other law schools thought about the boycott at the time. Richard Moberly, the dean of the University of Nebraska at Lincoln Law School, wrote, "The revolution has begun. I've been wanting to do this for years, but my guess is that people will follow Yale more than they would have followed Nebraska." His quote is emblematic of the pro side of the boycott, but some other law schools were not so keen on boycotting the rankings. Andy Hessick, an associate dean at UNC Chapel Hill, wrote in an email, quote, "Boycotting imperils the benefits we've gained through working on the rankings. Harvard and Yale have left, but everyone just assumes they are at the top. We do not have that luxury." So these two perspectives, on the one hand, Nebraska in favor of the boycott, on the other hand, UNC Chapel Hill seeing the problems with the boycott. Each side symbolizes the particularly tricky position that law schools are in vis-a-vis their relationship with the U.S. News Law School rankings. On the one hand, they hate the rankings, they hate the incentives the rankings create, the competition between the different law schools, but on the other hand, they also feel that they need the rankings due to the perception of the prestige they gain through increasing their school's status in the rankings. For those who were not following this story, approximately 1 year ago, Yale, quickly followed by Harvard Law School, boycotted the rankings, announcing they would no longer participate in voluntarily submitting internal data to U.S. News about their students, both from the admissions end as well as the outcomes end. Several other law schools quickly followed suit, most of the T14, as well as many law schools outside the T14, roughly a third of the 196 law schools ranked by U.S. News at the time. Of course, U.S. News can rank law schools whether they want to be ranked or not, but U.S. News was reliant upon schools' voluntary participation, and as a result of the boycott, U.S. News had to change its rankings criteria to rely mostly on publicly available data they can get from the American Bar Association, just as anyone else can get the data as well. For those who are wondering why were law schools boycotting their rankings, Yale and Harvard cited two major reasons. One of them was that they did not like how U.S. News categorized graduates who chose to go into law in the public interest. And secondly, they did not like the fact that U.S. News incentivizes law schools to grant lots of merit-based scholarship money rather than need-based scholarship money. You see, one of the biggest factors in the rankings is the admissions stats of matriculating students, the LSAT scores and GPAs of students who are admitted and choose to go to that law school. If schools are devoting money to attract students whose numbers are above their current medians, law schools can then raise their status in the rankings by getting more of those applicants going to their schools, boosting those LSAT and GPA medians. That is money that, of course, would have gone to could have gone to need-based financial aid instead. And therein lies one of the perverse incentives of the rankings. It causes schools to grant lots of merit-based financial aid. One of the biggest ways to increase your scholarship offers as an applicant is to increase your LSAT score. Law schools will then want to incentivize you to choose their school over others because you are then a hot commodity. If you're applying to a low-ranked school with a 170 plus LSAT score, law schools love to see that because then you will have a significant impact on raising their LSAT medians. Of course, the removal of the rankings as a consideration would then pose a problem for that merit-based scholarship money because then law schools don't have the same incentive to consider your LSAT score and GPA quite as heavily. Will that money then be devoted to need-based financial aid instead? That's hard to say, and that's why I'm somewhat skeptical about Harvard and Yale's claims here, because of course they could have very easily granted tons of need-based financial aid and merit aid if they wanted to. These schools are sitting on billions of dollars in endowment money. Tuition money is not really a significant factor in their law school's budgets, or does not need to be, certainly, but it is the case for many other schools that tuition money is significant for them. Anyway, let's look at what was the outcome of this U.S. News Law School ranking boycott. In response to law schools' concerns, U.S. News made significant changes to their methodology between the 2023 rankings and the 2024 rankings. For those who are confused about the years here, the rankings are actually dated 1 year ahead. So the 2024 U.S. News Law School rankings actually came out in early 2023, and the 2025 law school rankings come out in early 2024. Just another way to make the rankings seem even more current, of course. But anyway, here are the big takeaways in terms of the changes to the methodology as a result of the law school rankings so-called boycott. Student outcomes had previously been 26% of the methodology, or 26% of the weight. It was then more than doubled to 58% of the weighting in their methodology. Student outcomes includes employment outcomes, employed at graduation, plus those employed 10 months after graduation, and it also considers bar passage rates as well. So employment outcomes and bar passage rates together make up the student outcomes, which went from 26% to 58%, more than double. The student selectivity, which is the LSAT and GPA of matriculating students, went from 21% to 10%. So the LSAT and GPA medians actually dropped in importance for the methodology as a whole. Quality assessment, which includes peer assessment and lawyers and judges assessments of a school, went from 40% to 25%. And this is really one of the most absurd portions of their methodology, in my opinion, because who really cares what a bunch of lawyers and judges think about all these law schools, and where are they actually getting their perceptions of the quality of the law schools? They are not necessarily staying up to date on what law schools are up to. And if anything, this is somewhat circular in nature, because their perception of the prestige may come in large part from the rankings themselves. So if they saw Yale, Stanford, Harvard were all pretty high in the rankings before, they'll say, those are pretty good schools, I'm going to rate them highly once again. So around and around and around it goes. I'm glad to see that the quality assessment dropped from 40 to 25. And the student selectivity dropping from 21 to 10. I'm not so keen on that. Of course, I think the LSAT has an important role to play here in predicting first-year law school grades, which then in turn relate to bar passage rates after the fact. Of course, I was happy to see the student outcomes with employment and bar passage rates increasing in relative importance as well. And so I could expect that law schools will want to devote more resources to bar passage and employment for their graduating students. Now, when it comes to your perspective as an applicant, however, the biggest thing you can do to impact your odds of getting in remains having the highest GPA possible and having the highest LSAT score possible. Of course, your GPA is likely pretty fixed by this point in time. If you're finishing up college or you've already graduated, it's a done deal, of course, which leaves the LSAT score as the biggest factor in the law school admission process for you. LSAT weighs more heavily than GPA in the US News rankings methodology, and of course, it ranks more heavily as well in how law schools consider you as an applicant. So it's kind of ironic, actually, or kind of unexpected, maybe you would think, but your LSAT score, which could be a single day of 2 to 2.5 hours, that weighs more heavily in your chances than your entire 3 to 4 or even 5 years of undergraduate combined in the form of your GPA. So if you're still studying for the LSAT or you're considering a retake, the LSAT is the biggest thing you can do to boost your chances. And of course, getting an LSAT score above the median of the schools to which you're applying will maximize your odds of getting in, as well as getting significant scholarship money. So if you're looking for that top LSAT, especially 170 plus, please reach out. I'd be happy to help. At LSAT Unplugged, we offer live online classes via Zoom, on-demand video courses, small group coaching, and one-on-one coaching. You can check out the links below this video to find out more and to book a call with me and my team. We'd love to help you out. If you found this video helpful, please do me a favor and share it with someone who needs to see it. I don't do any advertising for this channel. I rely only on word of mouth to help get the word out, and your sharing this video really does make a big difference. In the meantime, I'll wish you all the best and take care.